Most wonderful time of the week as it is Wednesday, and we are joined by the sports director over at WAFB, Jacques Doucet, joining us this morning. JD, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm standing outside the Spectrum at South Downs, and to my left is the Bulldog, and I'm guessing that the two of you have spent more time at one of those than the other, but I'm not sure.
Hey, I'd like you to take your pick on which one of us is hanging out at which spot.
Well, I'm looking at the physiques. No offense, Lloyd. You stay nice and thin into your 30s, but I'm going to guess Noah's been supersetting at the Spectrum, and maybe Lloyd's been doing his share of 12-ounce curls at the Bulldog.
Yeah, I've been supersetting at the Bulldog.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the memes that are going around, right? Richard Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne both lived to be the same age, So one guy was pumping his body full of drugs, snorting ants, cocaine, not sleeping. The other guy was sweating to the oldies and telling you to exercise and work out, and they both make it the same amount of time. So, live your life. Have fun.
There you go.
Different ways to skin a cat.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Jacques, I know you haven't met me in person yet, but I have a physically perfect physique. And I actually woke up with the Bulldog this morning. So, yeah.
And with the Bulldog.
Yeah, I had with a Bulldog, but...
It's hard to be so perfect, right? I mean...
I thought he was going to step his
Don't feel bad about it. Don't let other people's insecurity bother you.
There
I
you
won't.
go.
So.
Well, JD, it is the best time of the year as LSU gets on the practice field today as fall camp has officially kicked off. What are your expectations or the things you're looking for specifically going into fall camp in 2025?
Well, I was halfway joking, halfway being serious at work last night. I said, you know what? I could probably play video from LSU spring practice and nobody would know the difference, right? I mean, you go out there, you may see the same 3 or 4 drills to start. I think we can shoot the first 15 minutes of video, and then we can stay the rest of the time. And seriously, I appreciate Brian Kelly because I've been at Channel 9 since 2001, and certainly I remember coming to practices with Jerry DiNardo in the late 90s, and I think it was around 1999 where pretty much the media was shut out of practice for the most part. You could come shoot a few little drills and then they throw you out. But we get to stay and watch the whole time, so at least we get to stay and watch some competitive drills. We get to see them, competing against each other and, really get a true sense of who's standing out and who's not. And it's going to start with the quarterback. I got my latest edition of 225 magazine, and there's Garrett Nussmeier, big on the front cover, big color photo, Nuss Buffs, and he's the face of the team. He's arguably the top quarterback in the country returning, or at least in the top 5. And, how he protects the football, how he still makes plays in the passing game. I think the group that I'll be watching the most in connection to Garrett Nussmeier is the offensive line. Certainly replacing 4 guys who are now who have been drafted and moving on to the NFL. That's where it starts. I know they got 2 out of the portal that I think they figured could start right away. But if you can't run the football with any consistency and you can't protect your guy, you're going to see what happened at Texas A&M. You're going to see what happened against Alabama. Florida, they ran the ball, and then they couldn't score any touchdowns last year. The 3-game losing streak they had that threw the whole season off course there. So, Caden Durham is your leading guy back in the running game. Certainly, Caleb Jackson, you'd like to have him give you the taste of Leonard Fournette, Jeremy Hill, the big back that can, deliver some power. And certainly last year, was a step back for him in terms of yardage and didn't score a touchdown. And so you'd like to see LSU get him going a bit. And then Harlan Berry, the young guy, a true freshman. But I was at Southern last night for their practice. And, there's Trey Holly out there wearing number 19 running around. And it'll be interesting to see if he plays with Southern and what the deal is there. But, that's those are just a few thoughts of camp and what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's most surprising to me is, obviously there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of things to be looking at going into camp. And for the the past couple of years, really since 2019, the LSU defense has not been up to par whatsoever. And now it feels like it's really not that much of a talking point going into 2025 as the expectations have been raised. Obviously, they made the transfer portal additions, but is it surprising to you at all that it's not being made more of a maybe a concern going into the season?
Yeah, I'm thinking back on last year. Certainly the first game they lost against USC, I felt like that was a game in which the offense moved it between the 20s and didn't score enough points. Certainly the defense gave up the final drive in the closing moments, couldn't count on them there. And then A&M, that's when they made the switch at quarterback, and LSU just couldn't defend the read option. Alabama, Milroe, he ran all over LSU all night, right off the bat, opening drive. And then Florida, they really didn't it's not like they really lit LSU up, but they scored enough points, obviously, to win. So I look back on last year, and I feel like, the defense wasn't outstanding, but they were obviously much improved from the unit they were in 2023, where, Brian Kelly kind of turning the knife on LSU fans with the comment, we had a national championship offense in 2023, but we didn't have a complete team. And, that's a tough thing to deal with. I mean, looking back, that team goes 9-3 in the regular season. And if Jaden Daniels isn't on that team, I don't think it's a reach to say they could have gone 5-7. I mean, he even at 9-3 masked a lot of the deficiencies with the way he played. So I think there's a lot of confidence in Blake Baker going into year 2 as a defensive coordinator. I think there's likewise a lot of confidence in Corey Raymond being back for his second year since initially departing. I think that there's a lot of confidence in Kyle Williams taking over as the new defensive line coach and his experience. But certainly they still have a lot to prove. It's funny, we were talking about somebody said I'm so glad we moved away from the Les Miles era, and the Les Miles era, what they did consistently well was play rugged defense, punch you in the mouth defensively, and run the football. And the problem is that oftentimes during that stretch is that, against Alabama, when it was 3rd and 5, you couldn't count on your quarterback to drop back and complete a pass or complete passes to move you down the field and score points. So I think in this, certainly in the last, since 2019, LSU's played football, I think, for 132 years, and the 2 best quarterbacks in their history have come the last 6 years. So I think they've developed the quarterback and developed the passing game and modernized the offense. But the defense has certainly not been the defense of old. And so you'd like to see that continue to progress. And especially when you're going on the road the first game in this hostile environment. Your offense may have some problems getting their feet underneath them early on with the crowd noise, new offensive linemen, and that kind of thing. You'd like to be able to kind of maybe lean on your defense a little bit to settle you in and get your feet underneath you and try to quiet that crowd a little bit when you're starting in such a hostile environment on the road.
It's been an interesting start for Brian Kelly's tenure at LSU. Obviously, you mentioned Les Miles. It makes me think of Les being able to win a national championship in 3 years. Ed Orgeron wins a national championship in 3 years. For Brian Kelly, you've covered LSU a long time. Do you ever remember maybe a head coach and more of a have to win it now kind of moment than what Brian Kelly's under right now, where it feels like there's more pressure on him to win a national championship just because the other two saw success so early that he kind of got to ride that into the ether a little bit. But now with Brian Kelly not being able to win a national championship yet, have you ever felt more pressure on a head coach at LSU in your time covering LSU?
Well, Lloyd, yes and no. I mean, what has not changed is the fact that he's got a 10-year contract that's 90% guaranteed. And I think the line that I've used is that if LSU doesn't make a playoff this year and they fall into no man's land again, like last year where they're 8-4 or even a 9-3 team that doesn't make it, LSU won't be able to fire Brian Kelly, but the fans will fire Brian Kelly. They will say, okay, if we can't make it this year with our veteran quarterback, with what they spent $3.3 million in the portal, or at least that's what they got. Brian Kelly made the pledge for $1 million, then they got 1,600 LSU donors to bump it up to $3.3 million into the roster. I think they've addressed their needs. I think that they don't have any quote unquote gaping holes on the roster at this point. And so, but you could still be a very good team and lose your first game. And I think that's what could be very frustrating about the schedule is if you go in there, you fight like hell, and you lose 27-24, and you're like, here we are again, 0-1, you know. So I think there's your emphasis on the first game and trying to win that thing, because if you don't, then, you know, just 2 weeks later, you got Florida coming in, a very dangerous team, and if you have 2 losses in September, then I don't say you're out of it, but, you know, it's going to be in this modern day media where shows like this and X and all these different social media where people don't go there to be positive, they go there to be negative. Not this show, of course. This show is bursting with positivity.
Thank you.
But everything else, you know, out there, the noise and everything, that could be interesting. But, you know, Brian Kelly, this is year 4. So after he finishes this, LSU still owes him, another $60 million. So that's always been the question. How much pressure is actually on Brian Kelly? And it's funny that how many fans still I see that are like, he's got a 10-year contract. It's 90% guaranteed. Why did they do that? You know. So well, I think at that time it was a case of Lincoln Riley was out of the mix, and we got to get a coach to the podium. We got to get a coach. We got to start this thing, and maybe Brian Kelly kind of held all the cards and said, okay, you want me to come to Baton Rouge? Here are the terms. And they said, okay, we'll do it. And so interesting times over at LSU. You know, certainly with President Tate leaving and Kelly's then being poached, it looks like, and even through his great success, you know, you still hear some chirping every now and then about what kind of job Scott Woodward's done, and are they happy with him, and is Brian Kelly hired and all that. So tough to work at LSU these days. Much tougher than it was when I was growing up on this stuff in the 80s and 90s. There's so much money being thrown around, so much pressure. Got to win, got to do this, got to do that. It's where LSU is in 2025.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that kind of sets up the question I was going to ask is, do you remember I guess a fall camp starting or a season starting with this much pressure, it feels like, not on Brian Kelly specifically, but the team and the program as a whole, where it's almost like if you don't kind of crack the college football playoff this season, when are you going to be back to this level with this roster and the way that things have kind of all fallen right?
It feels like they've put their chips all in.
Yeah, I think that they've discussed the season opener more this camp or this summer than they have in years past. I think just, you know, kind of scouring my brain a little bit, you know, Les Miles in his first 2 years, you know, 2005 was the Katrina and Rita and a lot going on, and they still went 11-2 overall, made the SEC championship game, blew out Miami in the bowl game. The second year, I think 2006, a lot of people look back on that team as one of the greatest teams in LSU history that did not win a national championship. They, you know, way too conservative offensively at Auburn, lost that game, kind of tripped over their own feet against Tim Tebow in Florida in the swamp and lost that one. And so I think going into 2007, they looked at that team with the veteran leadership of your Glenn Dorsey's and Jacob Hester's and Matt Flynn's and early Doucet's. I think that year was kind of like, okay, this is a national championship or bust season. And, you know, they did lose 2 games in the regular season, and everything fell into line for Les Miles and company to reach the national championship and blow out Ohio State after they fell behind 10-0 in the game. So I think that year there was a lot of pressure. But I don't think Twitter was up and running really at that point, and some other things that create all this noise and talk. You know, I'm thinking that, you know, Les Miles going into 2014, that was right. That was that was the Lambeau game, right, against Wisconsin, where, you know, he pulled himself back from the cliff. Everyone thought it was his last game against Texas A&M. 2016, my bad. 2016 was the game against Wisconsin and Lambeau. 2015 was when, you know, we thought his last game was against Texas A&M. Joe Oliva gets up and makes some bizarre, you know, statement. Les Miles is our coach, and he'll continue to be our coach, okay? And I think Scooter Hobbs was like, well, why didn't you say that a long time ago?
Scooter.
And I think Oliva said, because I said I'd say it at the end of the season. And so that was, you know, that goofy thing. And bringing him back. So, yeah, I think 2016, we had Kendall Beckwith and Tre'Davious White both announced they were coming back. And you were top 5 in the country. And you went out there and just really, especially offensively, laid an egg against Wisconsin, lost the game, and then Les Miles was fired a few weeks later. So I think at LSU, the pressure's always on. I mean, 2018, Ogeron had the first year as the full-time coach was 17. They had lost to Troy that year, and then they kind of stabilized themselves. There were a lot of coaches being fired in the league. I think they went 9-3 in the regular season or something like that. Then they lost the bowl game to Brian Kelly and Notre Dame in the rain, and there was a lot of talk about, wow, you got to open up with top 10 Miami on the in Arlington. Then you got to play Auburn on the road in the first 3 games. You could be 1-2, kind of like this conversation. And they came through and they won both and had a very nice year. Won 10 games, beat Central Florida, broke their long winning streak in the Fiesta Bowl, and LSU finished in the top 10. So finishing in the top 10, obviously these days will get you in the playoff. That's what LSU needs to do. They've got it's time, and I think that's going to be the name of our LSU preseason special. It's time for them to make a playoff. Too much invested, too much interest. This is LSU. You should be one of the top 12 teams.
Yes, that is a very, very fitting title. I guess my next question is going to kind of circle around some more of Brian Kelly's comments. I just want your opinion and your thoughts on the Death Valley Jr. comment that to me has been a tad bit blown out of proportion. But I just wanted to get your opinion on Brian Kelly calling Clemson Stadium Death Valley Jr., which I think is correct.
Well, look, I think it's a shame now. I mean, I'm on a much lower level. I do these quarterback clubs and go speak sometimes, and certainly you want to be entertaining, right? Without,
play to the room.
Right, exactly. You want to be entertaining without being, say anything that's inappropriate or whatnot. And so you go in there and you crack some jokes that are really rated G and not offensive. And you don't want to go in there and people walk out. It's like, God, that guy was a stiff. Man, that was boring, So I think that, it's calling it Death Valley Jr. is about as
tame,
non-offensive as can be. So I didn't have any problem with. The problem is these days there's a camera rolling everywhere you go, and there's always somebody looking to grab a headline, grab a quote, throw it up there, and here we go, and let's water and feed this thing and keep it going for as long as we can. So I don't really think that's a big deal. I think that's already a talking point. Who's the real Death Valley, right? I mean, so no. Now look, if LSU loses, there will be. I'm sure Clemson will have the tweet loaded. How about that Death Valley Jr. coach, and they'll throw up the shot of him banging his fist against after the USC game last year and all that. So that and $6 buy you a cup of coffee these days. So it doesn't matter.